Ever get that feeling like you stumble upon something in history and it's not like front page news or anything, but it just kind of grabs you, makes you want to dig deeper and see like how we got to where we are.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It's kind of how we felt when we started looking into this event. It's a
Mm-hmm.
significant tragic happened right here in Oregon. And frankly, we think it's something important for everyone to understand a little better, you know?
I think you hit the nail on the head there. We always hear about these big national events, the ones that dominate the headlines,
Right.
but it's often these more localized incidents, the ones that don't always get the same level of attention
Yeah.
that can really give us valuable insights, like into how societal issues evolve over time and how they impact individual communities and ultimately all of us.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to try to do today, unpack this together.
Right.
It's a deep dive into the 1977 shooting at Uncle Albert's Lounge in Klamath Falls, Oregon. Now, that name might not ring a bell for everyone right off the bat, but trust me,
Yeah.
the details of this event they're startling. And in a way, they hold a key to understanding some of the tragedies we see happening even today, sadly.
That's right. July 23rd, 1977, a little after midnight. A man named DeWitt Charles Henry, armed with an AR-15 style semi-automatic rifle,
Yeah.
opened fire on the people inside this nightclub.
And, I mean, this is one of those moments in history that unfortunately has echoed through the years, hasn't it?
It has.
It's just devastating, 6 people lost their lives right there at the scene.
Wow.
And tragically, one of the victims, Carol Ann Cedar, she was 8 months pregnant.
Oh my gosh.
So you're talking about 7 lives lost,
Right.
plus 2 others were injured.
It's a stark reminder, isn't it, about just how sudden and how brutal this kind of violence can be.
It is. It's hard to even wrap your head around it sometimes.
So.
What's really significant about this event, and our source material really emphasizes this, is its place in history. At the time, this was the worst mass shooting that Oregon had ever seen. This gives you a sense of the scale of this tragedy, the impact it had on that community.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a very sobering statistic.
It is. And here's where it gets, at least for me, and maybe for you listening too, really interesting. Okay. This 1977 shooting, it marks the first use of an AR-15 in a modern mass shooting.
Oh, wow.
Let that sink in for a second. The weapon that we now so closely associate with these horrible events, it has its roots in this tragedy over 4 decades ago.
Yeah.
It's a historical turning point, and one that I think it's crucial for all of us to be aware of.
It's a crucial point to understand. It sets a historical marker in a timeline that unfortunately continues to this day. And our mission today with this deep dive, drawing directly from the Wikipedia article on the shooting,
Right.
is to really understand the context surrounding this event, look at the individual responsible, and examine the immediate aftermath to try and get a fuller picture for everyone listening.
So let's start with the event itself, just to kind of set the stage with the core details.
Yeah.
July 23rd, 1977, just after midnight, at Uncle Albert's Lounge, which was located on South 6th Street in Klamath Falls.
Okay.
The weapon, as we mentioned, was a .223 caliber Colt AR-15 SP1.
And just to be clear for everyone, the source really emphasizes that this was an M16 style semi-automatic rifle.
Yeah. Really.
So one trigger pull equals one shot.
Exactly, one shot. And that's a defining feature of the AR-15 platform, something to keep in mind as we discuss this shooting and the events that followed in later years.
Absolutely, a key characteristic to remember.
And Henry's initial act was just that, opening fire on the people inside the club.
Right.
And the human cost was, as you can imagine, immense.
Yeah.
6 individuals died right there in the club. Gary Lee Anderson, 27 years old, Michael Gene Mortensen, 23, James L. Truman, 25, Andrew Lane Walker, also 23, Robert Dale Cedar, 26, and his wife, Carol Ann Cedar, who was 23 and, as we mentioned, pregnant. It's just gut-wrenching to even think about, the families and everyone affected by this.
It is, and it's something for all of us to remember, too, because the loss extends beyond those who were killed that night. The impact, as we've seen in so many other cases, ripples through the community, their families, their friends, the wider community in Klamath Falls.
Yeah.
This is a tragedy that undoubtedly touched many lives and continues to do so.
Absolutely. Now, let's shift our focus to the person behind this, DeWitt Charles Henry, so we can try to understand a bit more about him. He was born in April of 1951 and adopted in California. And from what we can gather, he was just your average student. involved in extracurriculars like, football, Future Farmers of America. He went to college for a bit after high school, but then dropped out and started working.
Right.
On the surface, these details don't exactly scream, this is someone who's capable of such violence, right?
That's what's so fascinating. These initial details, they don't really paint a picture of someone who would go on to commit such an atrocity. It just goes to show how complex this whole issue is. It's hard to understand the path to violence. You can't always predict it. All these factors come together in ways you wouldn't expect.
Yeah.
But then, in 1971, there's a significant turning point. A traffic accident. He was driving way too fast, something like 80 to 85 miles per hour.
Oh, geez.
And crashed head-on into another car. A woman, Glenna Holmes, she was 30 years old. She died from her injuries just 4 days later.
Oh, wow.
So you can imagine how such an event could deeply affect someone, right?
Right. And what's interesting here is that although he did face consequences, some might argue that they weren't, severe enough.
Okay.
He was originally charged with felony drunk driving and manslaughter, but that got reduced to misdemeanor manslaughter. So he lost his license, though there were exceptions for work.
Okay.
And he was fined $500 and got 14 weekends in jail. And this is something I always wonder about in these situations. Did those consequences, did they have any impact on his later actions? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Makes you think about accountability, doesn't it?
It does. It does. So after this accident and then the death of his adopted father, Henry moved to Oregon, cut off contact with his adoptive mother. He joined the Navy briefly, but was discharged for health reasons.
Right.
These are all just pieces of his life story, but it seems like, from what we can tell, there was a pattern of instability there.
It does seem that way. There's this sense of, things not quite going right for him.
Right. He held down various jobs, but according to our source, he was fired from some of them for being threatening and belligerent.
Oh, wow.
And get this, about a year before the shooting, he was actually working as a bouncer at Uncle Albert's Lounge itself.
You're kidding.
So not only did he know the place, but it's likely he knew some of the people there too.
Yeah. It's chilling when you think about it that way.
It really is. He was also married at the time to a woman named Vicki Paulus, who had 2 children from a previous relationship.
Okay.
And he was apparently very concerned for their safety. There were threats and property damage from her ex-husband. So he actually sent Vicki and her sons away to keep them safe while he stayed home, armed.
It paints a picture of a man under a lot of stress, feeling the need to protect his family.
Exactly. But, it's a reminder that the way people respond to stress can have tragic consequences.
Yeah, for sure.
We also know that he attempted suicide by overdosing on drugs just a couple of months before the shooting in May of '77.
Really?
Vicki actually described him as a long-time drug abuser who may have had psychological problems and suffered from frequent sleeplessness. This is something we see often in these cases, a potential mix of mental health challenges and substance abuse.
Right. It can be a very dangerous combination.
And just days before the shooting, on July 21st, things escalated even further. He was served with divorce papers.
Oh.
The next night, he tries to reconcile with Vicki. And this is where things get really scary.
Okay.
He threatens her with a gun, first pointing it at her, then at himself. He eventually throws the gun out the window after she agrees to come home if he gets rid of the weapon.
Oh, my God.
Just like, you see this pattern of escalating behavior, and it's a huge red flag.
Absolutely. A sign that things are spiraling out of control.
And on the morning of the shooting, July 23rd, Vicki ends the relationship. Henry's response, this is hard to even hear.
Yeah.
He goes back and retrieves the gun he'd thrown away.
Oh, no.
And then he spends the day drinking beer, smoking marijuana, and taking amphetamines.
It's a recipe for disaster, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And here's another layer to this whole thing that I just find, incredibly sad. Vicki actually called the police that same day.
Oh, wow.
For protection while she was moving out of their home. She told them about the threats from the night before, but they said they wouldn't get involved in a family fight.
Are you serious?
Yeah, an officer did offer to arrest Henry, but Vicki turned him down.
It's just, you can't help but wonder, what if things had gone differently?
It's a question that haunts a lot of people when they hear about this case.
Yeah. It makes you think about the role of law enforcement and how they assess risk in these situations.
It does. So just hours later, Henry goes to Uncle Albert's, gets into a fight with another customer, and is kicked out. Then he goes to another nightclub and actually tells someone there that he's going to get revenge.
He said that.
Yeah, he actually said that. He goes back to Uncle Albert's and gets into it with the owner over an unpaid bill of like $180 or something.
Oh.
And during this argument, he threatens to blow away people, including the owner. And this is where he gets really eerie. He even tells the dishwasher to leave
Oh.
at like 2:10 a.m. It's like he knew what he was about to do.
Right. It suggests a level of premeditation that's just, it's terrifying.
And then, well, it happened. He waits in his truck in the parking lot until the bar closes. And as those 50 or so patrons are leaving, he opens fire.
Oh my God.
6 lives lost right there at the scene. It's something we can't forget, the human cost of this.
Yeah, and it's just so random. These were just people leaving a nightclub. It shows how indiscriminate this kind of violence can be.
Yeah, anyone can be a victim. So in the aftermath, a state trooper, Michael Spencer, arrives on the scene. He actually fires at Henry's truck, causing him to flee.
So there was a chase.
Yeah, but thankfully it didn't last long. Another officer, Kenneth Cooper, crashes into Henry's vehicle, ending the shooting spree.
Thank goodness.
2 officers were injured during this whole thing, which really underscores the dangers that first responders face.
It does. It's a reminder that they put their lives on the line every day.
And Henry himself was injured by buckshot during that initial exchange of gunfire. He's treated at a hospital and then arrested.
Okay.
And of course, this leads to the legal proceedings. His trial begins in November 1979.
And what was the defense?
Well, as defense attorneys, they enter a plea of not guilty due to mental illness or defect. They cited his troubled life, the recent events, and his history of drug and alcohol abuse. He even claimed to have amnesia about the actual shooting, which, isn't uncommon in these kinds of cases.
I see. So they were trying to paint a picture of someone who wasn't in control of their actions.
Exactly. But in the end, the jury wasn't convinced. Henry was found guilty on 6 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. He received 6 consecutive life sentences plus 40 years.
Wow. So he's going to be in prison for the rest of his life.
That's right. And it's interesting, the death penalty actually wasn't an option in Oregon at that time.
I see.
So, it just shows how the legal framework surrounding these kinds of crimes can vary so much, even within the U.S.
Absolutely. And it raises questions about, what justice looks like in these situations.
For sure. Now, looking back at all of this, it's crucial to remember that in 1977, this was the worst mass shooting in Oregon's history. It was a truly shocking event for everyone in the state. And as we mentioned before, it was also the first use of an AR-15 in a modern mass shooting, where it sadly set a precedent that has continued in the decades since.
A dark legacy for sure.
Yeah. And our source actually provides a timeline of other notable shootings in Oregon since then. This is a sobering list. The 1981 Salem shooting, the 1984 Autzen Stadium shooting, the 1998 Thurston High School shooting, the 2015 Umpqua Community College shooting, and even more recently, the 2022 Bend shooting.
It just puts things into perspective, doesn't it? It wasn't an isolated incident.
It wasn't, and that's the hard part to swallow. So as we wrap up our deep dive into this 1977 shooting at Uncle Albert's Lounge, a few key points really stand out. It was a horrific event that had a profound and lasting impact on Oregon. It marked a turning point in history, being the first instance of an AR-15 used in a modern mass shooting, and at the time, the worst such tragedy in the state's history.
And the life of DeWitt Henry leading up to this event just shows how complex these situations can be, right?
Right.
We see this combination of personal struggles, a fatal accident, relationship breakdown, substance abuse. It all culminated in this act of extreme violence.
And it really makes you think, doesn't it? Considering this event and its historical context, what does it tell us about how mass violence has evolved and about the factors that contribute to these tragedies?
Exactly. I mean, it's not just about one single act. It's about individual history, societal issues, and the access to certain types of weapons.
Yeah, it's something for all of us to really reflect on.
Absolutely.
And, maybe explore further the history of these events, the societal factors at play. It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
I agree, but understanding these past events, even the ones that might not be at the forefront of our minds, is so important.
It helps us grapple with the challenges we face today and maybe even find ways to prevent future tragedies. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope it's helped shed some light on this significant and sadly tragic moment in history.
I did. Thanks for having me.
Of course, and thanks to all of you for listening.